that makes a lot more sense because I don't know. It seems like you're so focused on equality, and I was just wondering why you had that kind of focus. But having you
It's just
explain,
pragmatic. It's just the best way to express the points. It's just a language. That's it.
okay, okay, well, that's all I wanted to ask.
I just wanted to explore your morality a little bit more, if you don't mind. So
Okay.
I'm struggling to understand. I mean, so first of all, I'm struggling to understand what you actually mean by objective. What I typically hear objective to be is mind independent. So if there's like reasons or something that exists like external to our minds, that's not contingent upon like our mind changing or anything like that, then that's what I would typically understand to be objective. However, you
Right.
say everything is contingent upon your mind,
I didn't say that.
but then you say that we make up the laws of logic, for example, so they would be contingent upon minds.
The language we use is contingent upon minds, but since they're describing reality, it's like I can use the word tree to describe a tree, or I can use the Japanese word tree to describe a word tree. The tree is
That's
objectively
fine.
true, independent of a minds. And so
That's
when
good.
they say A equals A, that's description of reality. The reality is true, independent of minds. But the language we use isn't. So we could use a different logic, like many-valued logic, and maybe that one better describes reality. And so that one's true and not
But
standard
then,
logic. I don't know. I don't really care.
but then I feel like you gave the wrong answer to Oasis' question of you being a conceptualist then, but I mean, maybe that's besides the point. I am curious about like hypothetical
Because
norms,
logic is a part of the mind. Like, why would that be an incorrect?
because you're saying that it's a description of reality, and if logic, like the law of identity, is something that holds like external to your mind, then you wouldn't be a conceptualist.
Yeah, so it's possible that it's true independent of minds, and it's possible many valued logic is true independent of minds, like it describes reality. One of them could be the case. I don't actually know. I consider logic to be just a part of our minds, and it is possible that some of our ideas correspond to reality while others don't. There's not actually a problem there. So the logic itself is just a part of our mind, and
But then,
if it describes reality, then the reality exists independent of minds.
but it would
It's
be
like
a
if I said
property of
the rock
reality if it
exists.
describes reality.
No. No. So if I say the rock exists, the sentence, the English words and letters doesn't actually exist anywhere. It's just a made up concept language. And then the concept is describing refers to a thing that exists, which is the physical rock.
So
when I
you
say
think
the law of identity, that doesn't exist. That's just a made up conceptual language that we have, but it refers to something that exists, which is reality itself. So that the logic is just, we made it up, but reality is there and it describes the reality.
But then it would be a property of reality if you were to deny, for example, the proposition, two propositions, like the rock is, I know, 10 kilograms of the rock is not 10 kilograms. Like you would say
It's
that they
not a
cannot both be
property of
true.
reality. It's a description. So it's not a property of reality. It's a description of a property of reality, which is reality exists essentially. So the logic isn't a property of reality. The logic is just descriptions of reality or whatever properties it has. Logic isn't a property.
Okay, that's fine. That's not the point I wanted. That's not the point I really wanted to pursue, but I don't particularly understand the distinction.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask about like hypothetical norms because I just wanted that firstly was to understand what you meant by objective, and I think you hold to like a similar standard of something being like external to us, like the external world, for example, being objective. So that's good.
Yes.
So you say hypothetical norms are objective. Is that true?
What? No. Like hypothetical imperatives? No.
So if it's
Like, for
something
example,
along the
if
lines of
it's wrong to eat babies or whatever, if I want to be immoral, well, then that hypothetical imperative would be to eat babies. But it's purely because I want to be immoral. So that's purely subjective. The hypothetical part is the want, what you want, your goals. So it's purely subjective. The hypothetical is not any.
The
Go ahead.
hypothetical part, as far as I understand hypothetical norms, is not the want. The want is more like the which hypothetical norm you choose. The hypothetical norm is like the conditional. It's like the if then, which seems to hold independent of our minds, maybe.
I'm not sure what you mean. So like if I want to be immoral, then I would do immoral things. Like,
right. So that seems to be objective, but then also I haven't actually fully read up on like the objectivity of hypothetical norms to the point of where because it'd be pretty obvious that something along the lines of like, if you want to be immoral, then you should do immoral things. Like that seems to hold. But then you could say something along the lines of, if you want to be a good businessman, then you'd like negotiate aggressively or something like that. But that wouldn't be so clear cut
Right.
if it's
So
objective and not subjective, the standard that we're using.
right. So hypothetical imperatives are just, if you want something, you go get it. So if you want chocolate ice cream, you get chocolate ice cream. But if you want vanilla ice cream, you get vanilla ice cream. If you want to call that objective, I mean, okay, that doesn't relate to my model in any way, but the moral aspect to it isn't subjective. It's not related to the hypothetical imperative in any way.
Well, I was more curious of whether you thought those conditionals are objective or subjective.
I would say subjective, because I would just define it based on the want. But if you want to define it just based off of the relation, then you could call the relations objective, maybe, I guess.
Okay, that's fine. I think there's good arguments to say they're objective, but like I said, I don't really know them. But I was more interested in your position and the clarification, like where you stand. There's one more thing about hypothetical norms and the system of morality that you have. What guides which hypothetical norms we choose? Is it purely our desires, or is there any other more guiding principle as to which hypothetical norms
Yeah,
you choose?
I'm a judgment. So yeah, that would be purely internal. I think that our desires pretty much any something in our brain and nothing else. I don't think there's any external judgment-based externalism where there's something outside of us causing us motivations to do things. No, I think it's just our brains desires.
So you would say you're a moral objectivist because this idea of morality exists in reality, even if we weren't there.
Yep.
However, the way that we interact with this morality concept is subjective.
Yes. So we have an experience of morality, just like we have an experience of color, and that's subjective to how our brains work. But it is referring to something that does exist, like the objects, the photons, or whatever. So there is a thing in reality that exists, independent of our opinion, and our experience of it is purely subjective. Like moral intuition and moral progress are definitely subjective. We can't prove they're corresponding to an objective feature of reality, at least not yet. So yes, there is a subjective epistemological knowledge of it, and then there's of an objective thing that exists in the world is my model.
Okay, that's all good. I'm still like left not fully understanding what is this objective morality. You described it as some sort of moral progress and of intuition.
No. Those are the things, the phenomenon of morality we're trying to explain. Like if you're trying to explain gravity, stuff falls. We see stuff falling, and we're trying to explain, well, what is that? Moral intuition, moral progress is just the phenomenon that we see falling. We're saying, well, what is describing that? And my conclusion is that, well, if we plot all of the information out, kind of like calculate the rate of falling or whatever, we get this principle, which is no involuntary imposition of will, or involuntary imposition of will is bad. And that principle describes whatever it is that is the ontology of morality, just like F equals ma, or
So
whatever the gravitational thing describes the ontology of whatever gravity is doing.
is it the case that all involuntary imposition of wills are bad?
Yes, from my perspective.
So even if an involuntary imposition of will can save someone from like a large amount of suffering or death, you would still say that that's a bad thing to do, even if it saves them.
Yes, if they don't want the involuntary imposition and they would prefer the suffering, then yes, it would be
So,
immoral to force
for example,
them away from it.
you think it's ethical to let people to commit suicide then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that was more my curiosities, and thank you for answering. But I pass the mic to whoever.
Well, actually, that was probably the last one I have to do because I have another debate right now, a modern day debate. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was fun, and I will see you guys later.
Thanks for
thanks
coming.
for coming on.
Cool. Hopefully you won't do so bad in that one too.
Jeez, Joe, man, you're hardcore, bro.
You guys let these people get away with just the.
Wait, Jovan, did I do something?
Can I move us all back into general?
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's gonna be able to talk. It's gonna be great, boys. That's my boss.